Good morning. This is the Blaine's World Podcast, where conversations are worth hearing and seeing. Each week, you can watch us on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You can also listen in on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. And for more information, you can check our website, which is behind me, blainesworld.net. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and I'm coming to you from my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. Each week, we focus on positive news and information about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce William Schutt, who's a retired business founder, owner, engineer, entrepreneur, and now author, being my guest today. And Bill, you can feel free to wave to all you fans who are watching this. Give them a big wave. That is that's Bill Schutt in actually you're in Doylestown, Pennsylvania, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I miss that area very much. William Schutt is the founder and owner of Matcor, an international company involved with the engineering, manufacturing, project management of electrical systems that stop corrosion on metal structures in soils, water, concrete, and chemicals, with heavy emphasis on pipelines and infrastructure. He holds at least 7 patents and has done business in 33 countries with several non-USA offices. He now mentors students, business owners, and nonprofits, serves on university boards and councils, plays saxophone. Very interesting. Had I known that, I would have asked you to get out your saxophone, and semi-professionally does artwork for nonprofits. Woodwork and serves on several nonprofit organizations. He's been featured in Time magazine and several other publications and major television stations as a corrosion expert. Today we are going to also learn more about his book, Don't Hire Stupid People. Love the title. They are too much work. And Bill, as we're talking about it, you can hold that up. You got the book handy?
Okay. This is the book.
Okay, great title. And we'll talk about it in just a second. But before I do that, Bill, what I always do the first time I meet with somebody, ask them, as a kid, you grew up where?
I grew up just south of Doylestown. Doylestown's in Bucks County, a very famous place. And I grew up in a place called Abington, which is about 15, 20 miles south of here. And then found my way to Doylestown, which many years ago was like on the outer edge of civilization,
Right?
people
Yeah.
thought, but it's not.
The
So,
yeah, I love Doylestown. And so you wound up in Doylestown. How old were you when you wound up in Doylestown?
well, I moved here, I guess I must have been, 30 years old and built a house up here. I had just started Matcor, the business there. And so here I was building a house, took over and bought this company and started Matcor. And so I just got into everything all at once.
And so before you got into MatCore, as a kid, when you were younger, growing up in Abington or uh, other places, what did you want to do at that point in time, other than
Well, I
head your own
started my
company?
first business when I was 16 years old. And so I started in this, like so many kids do, started landscaping, cutting grass and stuff. So by the time I was 18 years old, we had about 11 trucks and 20 people on the
Wow.
road. And and at that age, had won a contract to build 11 township parks in Abington. And so we were doing pretty well. I learned business by being right into it and handling your own money and building that way.
That's interesting. You said you were on the trucks. Were you even driving a truck then?
Yeah, you were allowed. Well, it was a different time.
Okay.
And listen, I went into a major bank and was borrowing money against contracts, and I was 18, 19 years old. Today, you cannot do that, but nobody asked me. So I was setting up banking, buying equipment on, as you do with payments and stuff like that, got away with it. You don't do that today.
Yeah. I'm looking though, I don't see the frame, your first $10 bill or $20 bill or first check you ever made, behind you. But that's interesting. So as a kid, is that the first time you think you did cut lawns? Is that the first thing you did?
Well, I tried to get money. I was told by my mother that I tried to sell my drawings at 5 years old to the neighbors. And I suspect it's true. Uh, I guess I've always had an entrepreneurial. and wanted to have my own money and be on my own and not rely on or ask, parents or other people for money.
Did you ever sell any of those drawings?
I have no idea. So at this point, with the artwork and all, I did all the illustrations and the comics in this book that I wrote, and I end up doing art now for nonprofits. I published. This is the second book. The first book I wrote was for what's called the Village Improvement Association, which started the hospital in Doylestown, and so that was a coloring book with all historic drawings in it of the beginning of the Doylestown Hospital and where they are today and the people. So I like to try and do different things.
Well, it seems that. So that's very cool. So you did this for the hospital, then you wrote this book was fairly recent. It only came out fairly recently. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. It came out this past November.
Well, we'll talk about other stuff, but since we're on the book now, what was the idea behind the book, if you would, Bill?
Well, the idea behind the book was I was pushed by my wife and some mentees to, put down on paper all the mentoring. I mentor a lot of people. I have a long, long list that goes from students at Drexel University starting a business to very mature business owners. And I found that things weren't being taught in the business schools, like cash flow, how to deal with bankers, personnel issues, some of the very basics that the people should know who are in business, or even getting a job or working in a business. So some of it I had written and given to these mentees. So then I thought, let's put it all together, and that's what ended up being this book with about 36 short chapters about the different things in business that I feel are basics and important to know. Things as simple as fairness. Are you being fair? What does fair mean? Dealing with vendors and that sort of thing.
How long did it take you to write the book?
I write fast. We started in April and we were ready to go publish in September.
Wow, that's pretty ambitious. Are you the kind of guy, did you write every morning you said you used to get up in the morning and write?
Yeah, well, I wrote in the morning. For my whole life, since I've been a small child, I rarely sleep more than 5 or 6 hours. And so I have more time to do things than some other people. And
Well,
then,
I was going to
go
say
ahead, I'm
one.
sorry.
No, I'm sorry, but one of the nice things about the book too, though, is you also, as you said, you did the illustrations also, so you didn't have to deal with that separately.
Yeah. Well, the story behind that, and I'll try not to bore people. When I was a small child, I was getting private art lessons, doing oil paintings and that sort of thing. Then they stopped. So time goes by, and I always enjoyed and loved art. And I get to be 50 years old, and my mother said, "Did I ever tell you why the art lessons stopped?" I said, "It never occurred to me. I never thought about it." She said, "Well, they came to her and said, well, he can be a really good artist." And she said, "That's wonderful. Lessons are over. Artists starve, engineers do not." And so for my 50th birthday, I got a set of watercolors and a French beret.
I love it. Do you still have the French beret?
Yeah, I still have the French beret. Yes,
You
sir.
know, we're laughing, but it reminds me, I had just the opposite experience, Bill. I'm laughing at this, that as a kid, I wanted to be a singer, I thought, you know. And so at the age of 7, my mother takes me to see some lady's house. She has a piano, and I sing for her for about 5 minutes. And all I know is I never got singing lessons, you know. So they must have known something that this kid was not going to be a singer. Um, but yours is sort of just the opposite. So you could be an artist. When was your mother told that?
What's that?
When was your mother told that she figured out that you weren't going to be an artist?
I don't know. I must have been maybe in the sixth grade or something. I have
Wow,
no clue.
that's something. But she knew you didn't want to she didn't want you to be an artist at that point in time.
Yeah, well, they starve.
Yeah.
And
So fascinating. So did you then keep up your artwork through school and college and business?
no, I went back doing it many years later, probably in my 30s. I did a little bit. I started doing because of involvement with I did political cartoons and stuff for local races and for local causes here. And then I did take some more art lessons and get involved. Now as I said, I did this one coloring book and paintings for the hospital, the people raising the funds there as for a nonprofit. And I get involved in some other things. I
You have
like to
me,
try different things and do them.
you have me interested now. If I can just have you show one of the illustrations now, just in the book, if we can see it. If you hold up the book and then show me one of the illustrations, and then you did the cover
Well,
also.
the front illustration
I
shows
love
what
it.
stupid people might be, but we get on to it's so much of it is what you see. Oh, the one thing I'd like to teach people, if you can see, this
I
is
can.
what to do. See if we can focus that. It's pretty hard to do, but it shows somebody on a Zoom.
Right, I see it. Yeah.
And so if you notice when people, and this is something I try to teach, I put tips in there, people on the Zoom do not act as if they're sitting with someone. They'll sit and have Fluffy the cat on their lap, or the one that I think is enjoyable. I saw there was a meeting one time, and the guy is sitting in his, I guess, his home, and here's a pair of pants hanging on a chair behind him. I wanted to say, well, let's all stand up and do the seventh inning stretch. And so this is the sort of thing. It's small advice, but it pays. One big thing I'd love to get across to youth, get across to adults, is to do the old-fashioned write a note. Write a note to thank somebody. Write a note when you want a job. You get a big contract. You send a personal, handwritten, hand-addressed, stamped note, and it pays off.
Well,
A story that goes along with that. I was mentoring a master's degree student in finance and accounting at Drexel, and he was from China and he wanted to get this job with a company. I said, "Well, do you have their card?" He says, "Yeah." I said, "Well, I want you to write him a note." And he's looking at me. I said, "No, we handwrite a note and send that to him." And he looks at me and he's staring. He doesn't understand. I said, "Well, what's the matter?" He says, "Okay, Mr. Bill, I write the note and then what do I take a picture and email it to him?" I said, "No." They didn't understand. I had to say, "Look, we put it in an envelope, hand address it, put a stamp on it, and take it to the post office."
yeah.
They didn't know what a post office was,
Well, it's funny to say
but
that.
it pays off. And I've had people come in.
Well, it's funny because in my life, I've done the same thing too. Anytime I've read a book, not anytime, but several times, I'll write the author a letter. As you said, a handwritten letter. And I've actually, Bill,
Great.
developed three lifetime friendships as a result of that, and they became, your point, they became my mentors, just because I wrote a letter. Even in your book, let me ask you, put you on the spot. If somebody gets your book, and we encourage them to do that, do you have your address in the back of the book?
No,
Okay.
no, I don't.
Yeah.
It's a good idea, but
Yeah. Food for thought.
yeah, yes, it is.
Yeah. Just then,
If I'm giving somebody a book, of course, I give them a card with my address
okay.
and that
But I'm
sort
saying
of
if they
thing.
order it or something like that, you might want to think about that. Make it easier for people to reach you. Not that they're going to, but the ones who write the letter really impress you, or at least impress me.
Yes, sir. They
So
do.
talk about holding off on your career itself. Let's talk about the book itself then. So you have these chapters, things you've learned in life or in your business career. You mentioned the Zoom. Give me some other examples of stuff that's in the book.
Well, the one thing I find that works well is there's several things. One is that, as I mentioned before, is called fairness. So, and the fairness is, are you fair to your vendors? Are you fair to all employees? Matcor, I had started Matcor and then for another very large corporation, bought it out from them within 2 years. But I walked in one day and I saw here's the coffee in the manufacturing plant. They're charging the employees, and in the office they're not. We stopped it. How is that fair?
Wow.
When you pay people too often, the pay that you pay to folks is not equivalent. Remember, the guy or the woman that's packing up and shipping your product can kill your company if they do it wrong. So the fairness comes, are they being
Hi, we're back with Bill Schutt, and we're having some technical difficulties, but I think we're okay. And we're talking with Bill a little bit about his book, and you talk about the concept of fairness, Bill, and I think that is so spot on. You were giving the example that they give discount to who they give discount, and they didn't give it to everybody.
well, the fairness comes, our customers were major corporations and governments around the world. We did business in 33 countries. So, but the fairness comes, are you being fair with your suppliers and your vendors? A good example is there are companies that will go out and ask for three bids on something, and
Right.
people do it at home. Well, sometimes they know who they want and they just want the two other bids to beat down or have the selected vendor be less. Well, pretty soon that wears out. We found that we were able to, by working with our suppliers, they would put stuff in stock for us. They would, if we needed an emergency, they would help us. They're not going to help you if you haven't been fair with them. We made sure people were paid exactly on time. And yet, these companies would give us not just 30-day terms, 45 and some 90-day terms. And so we were able to work on one of my favorite subjects is cash flow, which they don't teach very well any place, but cash flow for businesses is the most important thing that you can calculate and watch. So,
And hold on, that just is kind of interesting. I like how you said that. One of your favorite topics to talk about. Why is it one of your favorites?
well, people will sit, and I've seen major corporations say, "Oh yeah, we made a great profit." Well, they're not bringing in cash and money, and they don't realize that. I would sit down and people, certainly with any company, even if you're a one person operation, you need to know when that money's coming in and when you need to put the money out to pay your bills. And so it's not taught like that. Everybody's mindset on this is on, am I making a profit? You can make a profit, not have cash flow, and go out of business. And you could make a slight profit and yet have great cash flow and eventually be quite successful.
And by the same token, Bill, I would work with students and entrepreneurs as well. And they tell me about how much money they're bringing in, but they weren't paying themselves, you know. So they were meeting all their bills, but they didn't realize that unless you're paying yourself, unless you're making some money on it, it's not a business. You know, it's a hobby or passion or
Yeah,
whatever.
exactly that. I know that I was sending a couple people doing a business, and they thought they were doing a business, and they're going to take a trip to look at this or that or whatever. And I told them, you have a hobby, and
Right.
so you're not making money. You can sit down and on one piece of paper or a napkin in the coffee shop, you should be able to write down how much you think you're going to sell, what it's going to cost, and what's coming in. It's a one-page deal. You can write a 1,000-page business plan, but you still have to come down to, am I selling this stuff for more than I get, and when am I getting paid, and how do I handle it? This works for nonprofits. I spent a lot of time with nonprofits, with universities, with a number of nonprofit organizations. I've been board chair and all that sort of thing, and they have the same issues. So this book, part of it is about how nonprofits have to act as a business. I've written and set up programs for cash flow for several nonprofits to show them, here's what you got to do.
By the way, I love the title of the book. And again, I have to ask you, how'd you come up with that title?
Well, that's quite interesting. The I was giving a speech to the Bucks County Chamber of Commerce many years ago. And so it was a lunch speech about business succession and that sort of thing. And someone in the audience asked, well, what's the secret to your success or whatever? And right off the top of my head, without thinking, I said, don't hire stupid people. They're too much work. Well, my CFO is in the audience, and I found this out later. Person sitting with her said, well, I guess I couldn't get a job at your company. And she said, no, probably not. And I thought, well, here we are. So that became my tagline: is don't hire stupid people. And it's not their mental state; it's what they do that's stupid.
Well, let me ask you this, and it's a great concept. I'm laughing at it also. How do you know if you're about to hire somebody stupid, or how do you find out if somebody's stupid before you hire them?
One of the greatest ways when you're hiring someone or doing or meeting the potential significant other is your gut feel. They say that in the first 15 seconds, you know. Now, there are other cases. We had good examples in the book. Fella comes in, the sales VP wanted me to meet this guy he wanted to hire. And I'm sitting with this guy, and he's telling me how he snuck into a factory to meet the head guy and all of this. And he wants to be in our sales staff. And I looked at him and I just figured, I said to him, you carry, don't you? He says, oh, yeah. So here's a guy comes in for an interview and he's carrying a gun. So that's stupid. And that's how you know with time and all you get to see, but your gut feel will tell you, and you'll see. Well, once you see, and if you miss it, then get rid of that person who's acting stupid because everybody else will know it. And it's dangerous for your company's survival.
It's funny you asked that question because at least here in North Carolina, that I guess that's accepted. I don't know if it's accepted now in Bucks County, but people carry all the time, and it's funny you asked that question. Is it are you allowed to carry in Bucks County?
I don't know. I'm not so sure. You can get a license, is
Right.
my understanding is you can be licensed to carry, and there are people who are carrying money, transporting jewel and other things, or I guess subject to some problem. But yeah, I think you can.
But
It's
you
not
don't
an
want.
issue, but the issue, because I just use that as an example because this guy was a bit rough.
Let
And
me ask you this. Aside from this guy, can you think of another example that kind of went up there with the stupidest thing you've ever seen that you hired or you didn't hire because it was kind of stupid?
Well, I remember one time we had this fella who told me, he says, I want to make as much money as you do, okay, but I don't want to work as hard as you do. I said, well, that's a problem. That's stupid. And he eventually had to worry about it. We had another fella come in. We did a lot of consulting. So we did these consulting for all kinds of structures. And he was just telling me he got lousy jobs and stuff, and he just needed. I said, well, the clients believe that it's important. That's why they pay us a lot of money. And he said, well, I need more time to myself. Well, we made sure he got a lot more time.
But it's
But
incredible. You talk about mentoring. Kind of you as a 5-year-old kind of knew this stuff intuitively. You always had it. But it's incredible. Some people don't have it or don't know it. And so talk about the mentoring process. And so if somebody's watching or listening to begin with, how do you find a mentor?
well, that's the thing. There's several ways that they can do that. One is people have to get out in the community. They have to get out and see others. If you're running a corporation, a small business, a shop, and you're the top person or you own it, you don't have any equals or people to talk to there. So you go to a chamber of commerce and meet people. You um, go to business seminars and you start meeting people. I had one fellow, he had he was the third generation running a very nice sized business. And I had been on a panel with him talking about business succession. He came to me later and said, would I be his mentor? Now, he was older than me, and I got involved with him and helped him through a lot of different phases, even helped get him a new president for his company, and eventually got sold. So he did okay. And that's how. So he just listened to me do a speech and asked me. Parents in Doylestown send me their children, their kids, because they don't know how to talk to them or listen to them. So we go on, and I just got known for that. Amanda's brought people to me, Amanda Solar. So
We'll give a shout out to Amanda who introduced us, and she does
yeah,
the podcast and does great work as well. But yeah, she does, I think, as well as anybody I've seen, where she networks with other people. I thank her. She introduced us, and I've introduced her to people as well. But I guess you just have to kind of be open to it. And what I find, Bill, a lot of quote kids are just not open to it. I never thought about it, that this is a good idea. What about afterward in terms of the follow-up? You mentioned writing that letter can be very powerful. Like, let me ask you this. You wrote the book's been out a couple months. Has anybody written you a letter about it yet?
no, I've had some emails and stuff from some people. Um, what I find interesting, because the book, there are short chapters, and they're as if, and I've learned over the years, you write and you talk as if you're talking to somebody. My grandson and some mentees have come back and said, I can hear you talking to me. And I find that the greatest flattery and honor going when they say that. And so that's what happens there. But yeah, today's people, they don't write, you know that, but we get occasional note.
And you mentioned your grandkids, have they read the book yet?
No, they haven't written a book yet,
No,
but
no,
they
read the book.
oh, they've read the book, yeah.
Read the book?
Yeah.
Okay.
My grandson is the one. My oldest one is in business, not in his own yet, but he's doing some things. And the other two are a little bit younger, so they read bits and pieces, and so we'll see.
And so when you mentor somebody, talk about two aspects of it. So when you mentor somebody, what are the things you do as a mentor, Bill?
Well, the biggest thing you can do as a mentor, the biggest thing you can do in life is listen. Most people don't listen. When someone's talking, they're thinking of what am I going to say next? How am I going to answer it? And they're not listening to what the person is really saying. But so if you listen, you'll know what the customer wants to buy. If you listen, you'll know what the significant other is interested in and wants. And if you listen, then we know what the mentee is afraid of. It comes down a lot of times, especially with the young kids. What are they concerned about? They're concerned they'll make the wrong decision. They're concerned about they don't know what they want to do in life yet. Well, some of us older people aren't sure where we're going to end up. So it's just so as a mentee, a mentor, the biggest thing is do is I listen to what they're saying and try to hear really what their concern is.
Well,
And so
it's just
often, and I help kids go into college and university. So
such good advice because I tell people also you see it with selling that I contend you can see a really good salesperson if he or she is doing most of the listening as opposed to talking. But so many salespeople do it just the reverse. They'll talk 70% of the time, and the great salespeople talk like 10% of the time and let the other people talk. But that's you don't see that too often.
well, what happens? So many, as you said, the salespeople can talk themselves out of a sale.
I've had that, yeah.
And well, we've had that over the years. The customer, and I call them clients, are the better ones. So your client comes to you and wants ABC, but if you listen to what they're saying and all, it may not be ABC, it may be DEF. And so you have to help them get there. That's being responsible. That's helping them achieve what they really want. But you're not going to do that unless you listen to them and carefully listen and know what they're really talking about. And that's what really works well.
And ask questions too to find that out. And I
Yeah.
should ask you then, since we kind of glossed over it. So I mentioned earlier that you founded and you're owner of Matcore. For the benefit of the folks, including yours truly, you don't know what Matcore is. What is Matcore?
Well, Macor is is in an industry called corrosion control. So on most major oil and gas pipe, all the ones in the United States and in many countries around the world, they need to have a system on there called cathodic protection or electrolysis to stop the metal from corroding in the soil. And that's been around for almost 100 years. It's a niche business, but it goes beyond that. So Macor um, makes a lot of the equipment. It's electrical type equipment, does the consulting, engineering there for designing and stuff, and have done that all over the world, and manages some major projects for installations like for refineries, tank farms, pipelines. Our people have been in northern China, they've been in Russia, South America, and all over the world, plus, of course, the United States. Now, I guess they didn't get across. I sold the company a few years back to a major corporation, and they're still doing quite well. So that's nice to hear.
But I'm interested in, so back to the company itself. So you sold it, but how did you get into that? So I understand, you're interested in art, you're interested in different stuff. How did you get into this field?
Well, I have, when I went to university, I have a degree in engineering
Okay.
and in business. And so I went to, when I got out of school, went to work for a company, and we started doing this consulting on the corrosion. I started a supply house for them because the suppliers in the industry were so bad, a small manufacturing. And then I bought that off of the company because it was the wrong fit for this large corporation. And I went on from there. So it had been with them for about a year or so. When I was running that company, under 30 years old, and running some other operations for them. So
And
I
so,
got involved in it by coming out of school doing it. I wasn't sure that's what it was until you're in it, and then you have no choice.
and so you started the company then from scratch, Matcore?
I started it for another corporation. Yeah.
Another corporation, got it. So let me ask you this then. So now you're doing this writing, you're doing speaking, you're doing consulting. What do you do when you're not doing all this other stuff? What do you do for fun?
When I what?
What do you do for fun when you're not doing all this other
Well,
stuff?
I also play saxophone, and which is very, very big part of my life. I play with the local university. I play in their symphonic band,
Oh,
jazz band. And I play with the local symphony when they need a saxophone. I play classical and jazz, and I have a quartet that plays from. We play down at the Constitution Center in Philadelphia up to Nantucket and do concerts, and we play mostly for benefits. But so yeah, I do a lot of different things. I do woodworking
when
and
you
all that.
and the saxophone, last question. Is that something you practice every day also?
Yeah.
Do you really?
There's a saying, I don't know, it was Joshua Heifetz or whoever, a famous violinist said, if I skip one day, I know. If I skip 2 days, everybody knows.
So do you
So,
still practice every day or still play?
yeah.
Very cool. And I'm so impressed. You were mentioning you also do artwork in your spare time?
Yeah, well, a little bit of that, and I do woodworking, gardening, and all kinds of other things. I like to try things and see if I can do them
And like you
and
said,
learn.
an interesting bit of advice you gave, I think. But I guess if you only sleep 5 hours a day, you have more time than other people do who sleep 8 or 10 hours a day. So,
It was one advice I give people ask me, well, what do I do if I retire? I said, well, first off, don't tell them you retire, tell them you're unemployed. That always gets a different
wait,
reaction.
we lost, I lost you
And
for this.
then the other is,
Well, I'm sorry, we were frozen on that. What was the bit of advice? Tell them what?
well, tell people you're unemployed, not retired. It's
Okay.
just more, you have more fun with that. But if people too often retire and do not have other, they don't have hobbies, they're not involved with nonprofits, they're not doing other things, and they wonder what they should be doing. Well, too many of those people don't last long.
That's so true, and reminds me of my first business card after I left teaching at Bucks County Community College. I called myself a rewirement expert in training. You know,
There you go.
so the point is, I didn't retire, but I rewired, and that's really good advice. That's certainly seems to be the case with you. You seem to have enough to keep you busy, um, whatever. And do we have any plans? Is there going to be a second book down the road?
Oh, I don't know. I get pushed for that. Write another one. Once I started off and I had 20 chapters. Next thing you know, there's 36. And then you keep thinking of things that, oh, I just told somebody how to do this or that, and that'd be great to put it on paper. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I just got this done.
But I'm thinking, yeah, in your spare time, write the second book. Anyway, Bill Schutt, I'd like to thank you for being my guest on the edition of the Blaine's World Show. I'd like to also thank, we mentioned Amanda Solar for introducing us. I also might thank my producer, Cappy Tassetti. And one of these days, when I'm next in Bucks County, maybe we'll bump into each other. That'd be great. Thanks.
I'd love to do that. That'd be fun.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you much.